So up until now we've focused mostly on the aquatic side of the hybrid tank, but today we're finally diving into the other half, which is the terrarium side of the tank.
I actually set this tank up back in the fall of 2024, and just a few weeks later, on November the 3rd, I brought home Coco, my leopard gecko. And at that point, he was just a tiny baby, only a couple of months old, but now, actually less than a year later, he's grown into a much larger sub-adult, and it's starting to show. This hybrid tank was always meant to be something unique, a space where two very different environments could coexist in the same build, water and land, fish and reptiles, and for the most part it worked, but not without a few challenges along the way. So in this video we're going to take a proper look at the terrarium side. I'll show you how I set it up, some of the things that have worked well and some of the things that I would absolutely change, and of course how Coco's been doing. So let's get started.
So to start off with, I'm going to walk you through some of the choices that I made regarding the build of the terrarium side. The process of building this terrarium side was actually quite challenging because I have a lot of things here in place that do require a lot of space, but the space is limited. You can see the water dish here is quite large. He needs to have at least two heights as well, which he does have. One of them is a custom build that I've done myself out of slate and egg crates. And the other one is a cave from Terra as well. But yeah, working with this limited space proved quite a challenge, and that's also why I haven't glued any of the slate rocks here and the driftwood in place as well, because I like to mix it up every now and then. So underneath Coco, actually where he is laying right now, I have a heat mat placed in with a built-in thermostat that is always set to 35 degrees. The background as well is a standard reptile background from Terra that I cut the styrofoam into place in order to actually make it fit. I also have a thermometer probe here in the back. This one can measure both humidity as well as temperature. So in that way I'm fully covered in both of those regards as well. It was also quite important for me when building this that I had some plants in here as well. And many people have actually struggled to have plants in leopard gecko terrariums, but this is the Crassula ovata. It's a jade plant or a money tree as well. You'll find the name of it on the screen here. But some of it is not doing really well and has dried out, but others is thriving as well. I think succulents is probably the easiest plants because they're very forgiving and they do not require lots of water. So if you want to plant in your leopard gecko tank, I would definitely suggest using succulents or air plants as well for the starters. That is also an ambition I have in the future, to put air plants in here, but I have other projects regarding Coco coming up beforehand. Now we can move on to some of the things where the hybrid tank has actually failed in some regards, and the first thing is regarding this lid here, because whenever I put on the lids, because of the water evaporation from the aquarium side, the humidity will also spike a lot as well. And you can see here the lid's only been on for a couple of minutes, but the humidity has already spiked to 61%, which is not ideal temperature for a leopard gecko. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is humidity issues whenever the lid is actually on the tank. And whenever I take the lid off, I run into a completely different kind of problem, because Coco has a habit of climbing on the background and actually escaping from the tank. So what he will do is climb on the background here, crawl up, and then go up here. And sometimes he will just lay flat up here. I have a picture of this that I'll put in. But other times he will actually climb onto the back of the tank, and he will actually climb through the back of the aquarium side as well, and into the drawer here from the back, where he will just lay and chill. And that's not ideal because, well, that's not part of his tank, and this drawer here is not temperature acclimated for him. So that's an entirely different problem we get when we don't have the lid on the aquarium. Although these are things where the hybrid tank has actually failed in some regard, I see them as part of a learning process, because I've never done anything like this in the past, building something like this myself. And yeah, I obviously did not expect him to climb out of the top, which I in hindsight could have, but these are learning experience and something that you need to come across at least sometimes in these hobbies. And this is also a great example of how things you actually put into practice comes out completely different from what you actually planned, because I planned this to be a raging success, but you see there's been elements on in both of these parts of the hybrid tank where things could improve, and that's definitely something I'll take in the future if and when I build something like this again. So in his tank, along with the hides, I use slates like these rocks to kind of build him some more habitats, but I will take those out now and I'll do the daily maintenance routine that you need to do with having a leopard gecko as well. So now comes the time where we can actually take a look at some of his stuff as well. This is a hide that I built myself, as I said before, out of slate and egg crates. And it works well, it holds together. It's not the prettiest. There's a lot of cotton wool here that you can see visible, and ideally it shouldn't be, but it works, and until he gets something different I can work with it. Now over here as well is the standard hide from Terrarium. That works as well. He's very happy with this laying inside this. This is also what I used as his hot hide, and this is his cooler hide, and yeah, it works great. Now over here is some driftwood as well as some of the other slate rocks, and I'm gonna redecorate his tank a little bit because he actually prefers to walk on the slate as opposed to the substrate layer, so I'll make sure this is more on the bottom rather than try to build upwards with it. And the substrate itself is the Arcadia Earth Mix Arid. And what I'll do now is take my hand into the substrate and just kind of move everything around in order to release some of the humidity. You see here, that's locked at the bottom. That's another mistake that I did initially, is to not put a drainage layer at the bottom. So I'll have to come in and kind of rum around in the substrate in order to keep the bottom layer of the soil from actually rotting. But before I'll do that, I will grab Coco. Another thing I want for the future is to have a terrarium for him that opens from the front instead of me having to come up from above like this, because he's not really a fan of this. So the soil is actually a lot drier than I expected. You can see there's absolutely no moisture down here. So what I'll do is I'll actually spray it a bit to have it a little bit more moist, and then I will put the slate rocks back in here at the bottom. So the substrate has now been moistened up a bit, so it's now time to add the slate back. I've managed to get to this composition, which I actually quite like. I think Coco liked it as well, because you can just wander around from a different piece of rock to a different piece of rock. I didn't quite manage to find a place for this one, but we'll just use it to create some height instead. I think that should work as well. So now comes the task of taking all of this for the thermometer and the hygrometer, and then actually placing it down again underneath the rocks. So that's now been done, and it's hidden quite well, I think. And what we need to do now is place all of the hides and the driftwood, as well as the last pieces of slate back in. Everything is now back apart from the water bowl, his worm bowl as well, and his calcium dish. I think it looks good. I'm very happy with this. The question is, what this little fella will think of it.
Now, before I move him back into his home, I think it's about time that I properly introduce you to Coco. Like I mentioned earlier, I got him in early November last year, so he's now roughly a year old. Back then he was absolutely tiny. He weighed just a few grams and he was really shy. But he's grown a lot since then, and these days he's much more of a confident sub-adult with a very big personality as well. Now I'm not entirely sure what morph he is, or if he even belongs to a specific one at all. I think his markings are quite unique but also natural at the same time, and I've always wondered, so if you happen to know or have a guess, feel free to let me know in the comments. Coco's quite active, especially in the evenings. He loves to crawl around inside the tank, scale the driftwood, and sunbathe on the stones as well, and sometimes you can even hear him trying to dig himself even further into the heights, which is not possible, but it is funny, and it's part of his routine and part of what makes him fun to watch and care for. And in terms of general husbandry tips, I try to keep it pretty simple. I have a warm side with the heat mats on a thermostat and a cool side to regulate his temperature as well. And I make that cool hide into a moist when I can see that it's time for him to shed. And I also have the few natural textures like driftwood and the slate stones for enrichment as well. And in terms of feeding, I feed him a rotation of gut-loaded insects, mostly crickets and mealworms, and I dust them with calcium, with D3 vitamins as well, because I do not have UV light, and D3 is therefore crucial crucial for him in order to have proper bone development. And just honestly, he's just such a rewarding little creature to care for. I mean, watching him grow alongside the tank has been a big part of what made this project special to me. And as the channel continues, he'll definitely keep popping up, but he will have to move into a different enclosure because he's getting absolutely too big for this tank. Now it's time to feed Coco and see how he actually behaves. So what I'll do here is I have this kind of bucket that I will lay him into with one of his hides, and then I will take some of the crickets and the mealworms and put them in there and just see how he reacts to them, basically.
Here he is, moment of truth. We'll just put him in here and then see how he reacts to everything. Well, I guess he wasn't hungry, he had to do something else instead. Great job, lad. I've tried to put some rocks, some slates in from the terrarium as well, to kind of make him feel more at home, but he's not having any of it. He just wants to get out from there. So I'll put him back in his terrarium, and then I will feed him with the pincers or the tongs in about 15 minutes or so. I think he'll be ready to eat by then. So he's back now in his home, and he's been there for about 15 minutes or so now, and I think he's settled back. So what I'll do is I'll try and just basically drop everything in here and see how he reacts to it. Hopefully we'll see some hunting behavior, but you never know, he might just not be hungry. But I'll set the camera up and then let's try it.
At first, Coco didn't seem to care at all about the mealworm grubs, and the crickets, he hadn't even noticed them. Instead, he casually strolled over to his calcium dish. Priorities, I guess. Then, he disappeared into his cave, while the crickets just kept casually exploring the terrarium like nothing was hunting them. But then something caught his eye. From inside the cave he must have spotted movement. Did he actually catch anything? No idea. From my angle it was impossible to tell. The camera then caught his attention. He stared right at it, then turned around and went straight back into his cave. But now he had a single eye trained on the crickets still crawling around the terrarium. And then the camera again. But this time, well, see for yourself. Yep, that happened. A little embarrassing, but Coco wasn't done yet. Determined to bounce back, he scanned the tank again. That's when he spotted movement. A cricket, scaling the background behind the cool hide. He crouched, adjusted his stance, and jumped. Clean hit. And before I even had time to set up the next shot, he already nailed another one. So that's the terrarium side of the hybrid tank, finally introduced and now a bit better understood. It's been a fun and challenging part of the overall build, but as Coco continues to grow, it's also clear that this space won't be permanent for much longer because of his size and the size of the tank. So I'll be setting up a larger enclosure for him soon, something that should give him more room to move and thrive, and of course this means that this half of the hybrid tank will be up for a new purpose, but exactly what I haven't decided yet. So if you have any cool ideas, whether it's another species, a dryland bioactive setup, and another aquatic setup, or something totally different, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you've enjoyed getting to know Coco in this video and seeing the project evolve, consider subscribing. There's a lot more coming up. New builds, more science behind breakdowns, and of course, the next chapter of the hybrid tank, whenever that should be due. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.